In a certain village lived a scholar, Lambodar by name. However, he was popularly known as Lambu Pandit. He was well versed in astrology and scriptures. As such, he was in much demand. At least a dozen people greeted him every day, affectionately addressing him as Lambu Pandit. The seniors called him only Lambu. Lambodar disliked the way they shortened his name. In course of his talks with the people, he always referred to himself as Pandit Lambodar, but the villagers were too naive to get the hint. It was the shorter version of his name that continued to be in circulation. The defect lies in my name. It is rather long. I should choose for myself a name which should be at once short and dignified. Let it be Shiva, he thought. From the next day, he kept on informing the villagers that he had changed his name to Shiva. They ought to address him as Pandit Shiva, but old habits die hard. The villagers continued to call him Lambu or Lambu Pandit. Disgusted, the scholar took a grim decision. That was to leave his own village and settle down at a new place where he could introduce himself to the people by his new name. He chose a prosperous village miles away for his new field of work. It is said that a king is adored only within the boundary of his kingdom, but a scholar receives adoration wherever he goes. This proved true in our scholar's case. He became quite popular in his new surroundings. Needless to say, the people knew him as Pandit Shiva. One day, while buying firewood, the scholar's wife asked the shopkeeper, "Are these chips dry enough to make a good fire? Ask anybody and you shall hear that Shiva's chips make fire, just as Lord Shiva's third eye does," exclaimed the shopkeeper, whose name was Shiva. On being reported this, the scholar fell into a depression. Of what value is the name which a mere seller of chips vaunts? Better I change my name to Vishnu, he thought. He informed the villagers of his decision, but the people of that locality were much devoted to Lord Shiva. The name Shiva was on the tips of their tongues. They found it difficult to address the scholar by his new name. The scholar got annoyed. He left the village and settled down in a bazaar where people came to know him as Pundit Vishnu. Days passed happily for the scholar. He earned well and was pleased with the popularity of his new name. One afternoon, a begging mendicant entertained him to a song. The last line of the song announced its composer, which was Vishnu. Who is this Vishnu, the composer? The scholar wondered. Who but myself, he thought. I must be famous enough for people to sing my own songs. At once, the scholar felt an awful distaste for his name. From the very next day, he began telling all who met him to call him Pundit Brahma. But the people of that area were devotees of Vishnu and found it uncomfortable to change the habit of addressing the scholar. The scholar left and took residence in a town. To his great satisfaction, he became known as Pandit Amar. Soon, he grew popular for his knowledge of astrology. He earned well. One day, his maidservant did not show up for work. The next day, she explained the cause of her absence. I had to remain with a woman who lost her newborn son. She had named her son Amar in honor of you. She was under the impression that yours was an auspicious name. A great pity. The scholar sat with his head hung. Soon he packed off to his native village. Come, come, Lambu, or Pandit Shiva. Villagers who saw him exclaimed, "Please don't hesitate to call me by my old name." Lambu, insisted the scholar.